Hi, I have a mic and a pulse, and today I'm going to talk about Fallout 4's Far Harbor DLC. So, in my last 3 videos, I've been talking about what's wrong with Fallout 4 and how it could be fixed, but I'd like to end on a genuine high note, and the highest note in Fallout 4 is Far Harbor. It's a great example of how to do DLC well, working strongly as both its own story and the epilogue to Fallout 4, while fixing some of the mistakes of the base game. So prepare to hear me say the words really well and interestingly a whole bunch of times. Now, without further ado, Part 1. Of the Island, for the Island. One of the many strong points of Far Harbor is the way it handles its factions, and the core choice that makes them work is that the 3 towns are the 3 factions. Now, some of this is obviously due to budget constraints, as making 3 towns and 3 separate factions would have taken too long for a DLC. But it works really well, because it means that almost the entire population of the island is either a participant in the conflict between them, or a possible victim of it, which makes the conflict feel more important to the island than the base games is to the Commonwealth, where only 3 largely external factions and maybe a dozen synth characters are at stake, while also making the side quests that you do in town feel like they're a meaningful part of the same broader story, instead of just distractions from a more important main quest. It also helps that it drops the Radiant quests, since just adding a little bit of actual writing to your quests does a lot to make them feel more meaningful. Building a settlement because a small child who wouldn't even talk to you until you'd earned her town's trust is paying you 14.5 caps for it will always be more satisfying than building settlement number 17 because settler number 97 randomly picked it, even if they use the exact same mechanics. The story is also well tied to the island itself, which is nice, because the settings of these games are often, for lack of an even more cliché statement, characters in their own rights, and the island itself is a major villain in the plot. The fog provides refuge for the Synths of Acadia, and makes it a holy land for the children of Adam, but it tries to kill the Harbormen, even though in a fair world they would be on the best terms with it, having lived on the island far longer than the other groups. The fog also drives the conflict, since many Harbormen blame the children for it, and many children believe it's Adam's will that the Harbormen be destroyed by it. And the fact that it's all set on an island forces everyone into closer contact than they would otherwise be in, preventing them from just totally ignoring each other. It also has a really dangerous beauty to it, and does seem like it's worth fighting for. The DLC also builds on the base game's theme of trust, using it to weave together the different factions. In the base game, it was expressed in the form of paranoia about synths. Here, it takes several forms, and is often paired with the theme of safety. Far Harbor has you earn their trust, in large part by making the town safer. The children of Adam are all endangered by Texas's paranoia, and Acadia focuses on Dima's manipulations in the name of peace. The theme of trust also permeates the entire main quest, which we will discuss in Part 2, The Mystery of the Missing Memories. Part 2. The Mystery of the Missing Memories. So, like all mysteries, and possibly all stories, Far Harbor is driven by a central question. Can you trust Dima? This is not a question the game asks you directly, or some quest objective where the answer is buried in a vault, but rather the thread tying all of the quests together. Each quest in the plot has a slightly different question, but they all revolve around that central one. This lets the players have answers to the smaller questions while maintaining the suspense of the bigger one, instead of just having to put off giving any meaningful answers at all. Note, it is possible that all stories work like this, and I just didn't notice. It starts at the Nakano residence, where the question is, where is Kasumi? Is she safe? Is she alright? Which really means, is Acadia a safe place? Can the people there be trusted? A nice detail I'd like to mention here is that the holotapes scattered around the house let you sort of meet Kasumi before meeting her in person, giving you some emotional attachment to the person you're looking for, which was somewhat missing in Baby Sean, as he was a baby with no personality, which is kind of why most of the dad games of recent years have you as the father to a teenager, or at least 10-year-old. When you get to Acadia, you meet Dima and Kasumi, and learn that indeed she is safe and alright, a point in favor of trusting Dima. Then you learn that Kasumi found some casualty projections on one of Dima's computers, and he has been having hushed meetings with his advisors, raising the question, what are the casualty projections for, and what are they discussing? Notably, at this point the game actually gives you 2 ways to get the info. You can spy on Dima, or ask him directly, confronting the player with the choice of whether they do trust Dima before giving them most of the information. Either way, you learn that Dima doesn't know what he's hiding, because he removed some of his memories and stored them in the nucleus, but he doesn't trust the children of Adam with them, so he wants them back. Then, unsure whether you could trust Dima, you set out to get them. When you do get the memories, you'll learn what the casualty projections were for. One, Dima was trying to keep the children of Adam from blowing themselves up by hiding the location of the launch keys to nuke the submarine, which, in a lovely parallel, is only still in the nucleus because its pre-war captain wanted to stop it from being used to kill anyone. And two, Dima made a plan to kill everyone in Far Harbor in case they learned of some dark secret. You aren't actually told what the dark secret is. To get it, you have to fight through a soda factory full of super mutants because it's Fallout. Whether you can trust Dima is still ambiguous, because he knows how to kill everybody, but he also hid those memories from himself, because Dima doesn't trust Dima. And the fact that he felt guilty enough to hide his memories of the dark secret shows that he has a conscience. The evidence is not in his favor at this point, though. Then, you learn that Dima killed Captain Avery and replaced her with a synth, which suggests he really can't be trusted since he's manipulating all of Far Harbor. Except, because he deleted the memories, he doesn't know she's a synth, and Avery doesn't know it either, so he's not controlling Far Harbor, he just needed someone there he could trust to keep the peace. It's also a good revelation because the fact that Avery doesn't know she's a synth means that it's not replacing the character of good Avery with evil Avery in the story. It just recontextualizes everything from she's a nice, reasonable person to she's literally built to be a reasonable authority figure who will continue to be a reasonable authority figure even if you tell her about her own death. These recontextualizing revelations work well because people like being surprised, but you can only surprise someone with a twist once. However, if your twist changes the way someone sees a character, then on a second playthrough /read/watch, your audience can pick up on new details they missed before and get a lot of little bonus realizations. Admittedly, it's not that long a DLC, so there's not that much to recontextualize to begin with, but good writing nonetheless. So, this suggests that Dima really shouldn't be trusted, and you can tell the people of Far Harbor about it and send them to attack Acadia, or, more reasonably, you can go and give him the memories and confront him with what he's done. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The game takes the question of whether he can be trusted, and then heavily raises the stakes of the answer. Dima, upon learning of the crime so horrible he hid his own memories of it, realizes that if he did it again, this time to High Confessor Tectus, then he could stabilize the children of Adam and bring peace to the island, and that's the only way to bring peace. So, if you want a happy ending, you have to put your trust in the hands of a synth who, though clearly focused on the greater good of the island, is also so manipulative that on top of manipulating the entire island, he is also manipulating himself. Can you trust Dima? The answer is, you can't afford not to. Part 4, A Tale of Two Synths. So, we're getting to the end, and I'd like to talk about Dima and Nick for a moment, because I think their twin synths separated at escape relationship works quite well. Having a character who's a relative of an existing character, or a sort of what-if version, is a common trope, and like all tropes, it can be used well or badly, depending on what the question is. For instance, the new Star Wars asks, what if Darth Vader was a millennial? A question that contributes nothing to either Kylo or Vader's characters. However, it can work really well if the question actually fits the character, and it does in the case of Dima, because he is the answer to the question, who would Nick Valentine be if he didn't have the pre-war Nick's mind? Something Nick has been asking himself his entire life. Having the memories of a dead man and programming from the Institute has given Nick a semi-permanent identity crisis over who he really is, and what part of him is human and what machine. An identity crisis not shared by Dima, who is purely a synth. Dima thus defines himself by his identity. He is a synth, and he desires to make a home for his fellow synths where they don't have to hide their true nature, which was never an option for Dima to begin with. Nick, however, not fully having his own identity, is defined by his actions. In his own words,
all the good we've done, that's ours, and ours alone. And even if that's the only thing in this world that I can ever claim as mine, not Nick's, not the Institute's, but mine, then I can die happy.
He's not Nick the human, and he's not sure he wants to be, but through his work he's been able to earn the identity of Nick the detective. The contrast between them is also very apparent in their morality. Nick's human side came with the reliable instincts and solid code of a good cop. Dima lacks this human side, but is not written simply as Nick's evil twin, as his lack of humanity isn't a complete lack of morality, just a difference in how he thinks about it, being far more focused on the greater good and less on the morality of his specific actions. I'd also like to praise the art designers, as you can see this dynamic just looking at, with Dima being bare-torsoed, obviously a robot, and having added so many additional pieces of circuitry to himself that he probably couldn't put on a shirt even if he wanted to, while Nick wears an old detective's trench coat and fedora, which, while covering his body, don't obscure his face in any way, serving not as a disguise, but as a uniform. So yeah, overall, a great example of using contrast to build characters. That's about it for major points, other than the most important point, which is that William Shen, who was the lead on this DLC and did a lot of writing for Nick Valentine in the base game, is the real deal and should be put in charge of more things. So, time for a lightning round of miscellaneous good things! 1. They added more stat and perk checks, which are nice in general, but also really important for a system like 4's, in which just maxing out one stat is really easy, but maxing all of them still takes a while, though it still doesn't work as well as 76's god-tier perk card system. 2. The Mother in the Fog, though spooky, could just be a woman with a stealth boy, but she doesn't show up on a power armor HUD or take damage from attacks. And spooky things with perfectly reasonable explanations that don't quite fit are the best kind of spooky things. 3. The Children of Adam arguing that not letting them convert people to their insane radiation cult is a violation of their religious freedom is A-tier writing. 4. The Robo-Brain whodunit was really funny, and having the killer be impersonating the victim because they're identical robots was clever, and a neat parallel to the main plot. 5. Being able to just ask the Railroad or Institute whether Kasumi is a synth is great integration with the main game, as is being able to send the Brotherhood or Institute to attack Acadia. 6. Finding the Red Death and telling a fishtail about it is great fun. 7. Giant hermit crabs using buses as shells is dope. 8. Love the Shadow over Innsmouth design for the Gulpers. Harpoon gun is also cool, though I would change the fishhook gauntlet for a bear trap fist. Alright, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and next time, New Vegas!